It's very fun to be here, thank you. So I'm the corporate archivist and chief storyteller at the Absolute Group, and we're owned by Pernod Ricard. And just before, I'm going to give you some background to what I do before I'm going to get into the real story, why I'm here. So I work as a corporate archivist, and what I actually mainly do is both internally, I work a lot to show our archives to our colleagues so they can be inspired and actually use our archive in marketing. And this is one of the things I just built. I didn't build it myself. I'm rubbish at that. So I had someone building this wall in our reception. And it's called the Legacy Wall. And we actually changed it. I changed the exhibition 2 or 3 times per year. So depending on what kind of campaign that's going on, we take archive artifacts and mix it up with new campaigns. So now we have an Absolute Warhol wall, which is amazing. And every time we do a new exhibition, we also do a revealing, and we have drinks. So people are actually coming. Probably mainly for the drinks, but whatever gets people interested in archives, I think it's a good thing. And actually, when I started as an archivist, the fun thing was during my interviews, I was very curious about how the archive actually looked like, and I told my manager during the interview process, and I said, "How do the archives look like? Can I come and visit them?" And she's like, she never responded. But when I finally got the job, and then I told her, "Can we please go and see the archives?" And she said, "Oh no, we don't have any. That's why we hired you. You're going to build them." So that was a bit of a shock. So that has been my work since the start, building up archives from scratch. And so, Kahlua, I'm the archivist for Absolute Vodka, so I'm very happy to be in another vodka country. But I also work with Kahlua, and if you haven't tried, it's a lovely coffee liqueur. And I'm also the archivist for Malibu, so it's a very good spread of spirits. And just a short history of Kahlua. It's a Mexican coffee liqueur. It started in Veracruz in Mexico in 1936. And the weird thing is with Kahlua, it has, even since the start, the founders, they sold the brand just 5 years after. And this has been the case since the start. The brand has been sold so many times that when it came to us, they didn't have any archives left. So when I started working with Kahlua in 2017, I actually had to try to build up an archive. So I went online and bought these bottles on auctions, but also we started doing research in the Mexican archives, especially in the magazine archives. But in Mexico, the archives, the magazine archives are not digitized, so it's a very exhaustive work, but luckily we have the help, because I don't speak Spanish, so it's a problem as well, but we have Spanish-speaking researchers that helps us doing the research. And what's actually very fascinating about the Kahlua history is these women. They were called the Kahlua ladies, and in Mexico in the early 1960s, it wasn't really a normal thing that a big company was run by women. But here in the middle, next to the priest, that's Maria del Pilar's Esma Guterres. And she started as a 17-year-old, just part-time employee at the company. But then just 10 years after, she was actually leading the company. And then the whole board was just female. And at the same time in the 1960s, a man called Jules Berman bought the company. And he just happened to be a collector of Pre-Colombian figurines that you see here. And he used them, his private collection, in the advertising campaign that ran for almost 30 years. So you can see it's like it's a bit comical, and he just placed the pre-keys, we call them pre-keys instead of pre-Colombian figurines, everywhere in the marketing. And they become very loved, this advertising. And it just happens that 2 of these pre-keys fell into my lap in Stockholm. So actually a colleague just dumped them on my lap, and I saw that they had been standing on a ping pong table actually, and I didn't think they were real. I thought they were just maybe fake pre-keys. I didn't really know anything. And so I got them, but then the pandemic came, so we started working from home, and I sort of forgot about them. But then we continued doing our research in Mexico, and I stumbled across an article that made me a bit worried, because the woman who had written the article, she actually wrote about Jules Berman, the man who did all the advertising with these pre-Columbian figurines, these pre-keys. And she wrote that they were these figurines were probably robbed from graves in Mexico during the colonialization in the 1800s. So I started to get worried, like, what if my pre-keys are stolen from a grave in Mexico? I didn't really feel comfortable with having them in my archive. So I actually contacted the World Heritage Museum in Stockholm, and I asked them, could you help me? I don't know how the process is with repatriating artifacts like this. And they were super helpful. They couldn't establish a year, or they couldn't help me with that. So they told me to actually contact the Mexican embassy in Sweden. So I did that, a bit worried again. Sorry. And so the Mexican embassy, they also told me we needed to take photos of these pre-keys. So we took photos and we filmed them from every angle, and we sent it to the to a museum in Mexico City, and then they would determine how old they were. And I got back, I'm just gonna see if I can, the verdict. So after months of work, we got the verdict from the museum, and it went like this. In this regard, I am pleased to inform you that the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico has made an exhaustive analysis of the archaeological objects and has ruled that they are original figurines from the culture tradition of Tumbas del Tiro that was present between 300 BC and 600 AD in the western region of Mexico. Therefore, the return of the objects to the Mexican state would be greatly appreciated. So they were around 2,000-year-old. So, and I just saw them, standing at the ping pong table in the office. So now the work actually began to how we should actually give them back in the safest way. So. We invited the ambassador, the Mexican ambassador, and his attaché to our office, and we signed a contract with them. You can see I'm quite happy there. And they got them back, and they sent them to the archive in Mexico. And this was not just a good thing for the pre-keys to come back to their origin country, but also for our company, because we work a lot with the Mexican state, with trade. So this actually created a tighter bond with them, because they were also very grateful that we were giving them back. So our CEO was very happy about this. But it didn't end here. Just as I could breathe again and start doing my regular work, I got a WhatsApp message one morning from a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. And he had actually read, because we posted this on LinkedIn, the story about the repatriation. So Walter, he contacted me, and he wanted an interview. and I don't really get interviewed by Wall Street Journal that often. So my manager got a crash course of media training with me just 1 hour before the interview. And I was, of course, very nervous because I didn't know the angle of how the article would look like. So I just learned everything about Kahlua, from bean to operations and everything, to really be secure with how to answer the questions. But he was actually very lovely, and he didn't want to put me on the spot, but he thought this was a very interesting story because in Mexico they have started with this repatriation project, and it's been going on for years because they really want to have the stolen objects back. So he was surprised that a company actually did this, that we wanted to give them back and not being told to give them back, because the Mexican state are asking museums and private collectors to give back objects. But this was the other way around. So he was very interested in hearing the story of how we were thinking about the process. So it was supposed to be 1 hour interview, but it ended up in like a 2 months WhatsApping back and forth. And actually, the last he was very Walser, the journalist, he really wanted to make everything right. So the last interview I actually did up on a mountaintop in the Swedish mountains on my holiday. But the lovely thing is that so the article went really well, and we got like amazingly good PR for Kahlua, because Wall Street Journal has I think they have 8 million unique readers per day. So the Kahlua team was quite happy, of course. And also, the journalist, he told me that the Mexican repatriation process, they want the Mexican citizens to feel proud of their heritage. So they don't want Mexicans to trade artifacts like this themselves. So they have actually a tagline. It's called "My heritage is not for sale." So they want it to become unacceptable and unethical to trade with artifacts like this. And since 2018, Mexico has actually repatriated over 9,000 objects back to the state. So these two were just a drop in the ocean. And so everything went well in the end. I was very happy. And everyone, I was actually very amazed that everyone was so helpful, because in the beginning, when it all started, I thought this would be like a PR disaster for Kahlua, for me. I mean, what if I get fired for stealing stuff from graves in Mexico? You know, when you start thinking about things like this. But everything went well, and it actually became a PR success instead of me getting fired. So I'm a very lucky archivist, but I'm also very happy that this is over and I can relax again. But the fun thing is our PR pro at headquarters in Paris, she contacted me and she said, you don't have anything from India in your archive? Because we want to have a tighter bond with them as well. So that's how they think archives are. So, yeah, 1 minute and 40 seconds left. Thank you.